So Gene Key 44 loves is, so if you don't know, if you're new, the Gene Keys are a transmission that came through Richard Rudd as he was a student of Ra, and Ra is the transmitter, the one who received the information and transmitted it on human design. And this information came through in the late 80s to help us understand who we are. So there's no accident here. If you imagine back in the 80s, there wasn't a big discussion going on about your creative uniqueness, right? You know, I mean, I was in high school and college, so I didn't really care. Anyway, I was just trying to, what am I going to be when I grow up? But there wasn't really, it was like focused on careers. My family never really dialed into creative uniqueness. Some of it, like you're really good at this and you're not really good at this. But you can imagine this technology coming through, this prism, this way of seeing life that highlights the individual. And of course, that's where we're going. That's where we are, and that's where we're going. We're actually going into learning how to work together, which is Gene Key 44. We're going into synarchy, but we have to start with ourselves because we don't really know what it is we have to offer until we have explored things like the Gene Keys and human design and not just as an outer reference of who we are, but contemplated it, found it inside of us, found the nuances of it, of how we're living it in our own canvas. How are we painting? If your birthday was the last 5 days, Gene Key 44, how are you painting with the concepts of teamwork and synarchy? So that's why this work is super relevant, and it's fun to look every 5 days. The sun hits a particular gene key, and that happens to be your life work if you're born then. And so I like to celebrate it that way. I like to look at it that way, and it really supports people in a distinction about where our conscious awareness is collectively in that 5-day period. So we just came out of 44. 44 is karmic relationships. It's this notion of hierarchy, but hierarchy from the come from place of shadow, the come from place of competition, of scarcity, of power over. Because if I have power over you, then chances are I'm going to be okay. If the world goes to hell in a handbasket, I'm going to be okay at your expense. And isn't that the frequency that's represented in at least American politics? I mean, probably every country's politics, because politics seems to be the lowest common denominator of our discourse. So the full moon eclipse on Tuesday is hitting the day of our election. And it's also hitting the North Node too. So it's our future, our collective future. And it's midterm elections. And it's interesting because someone posted, I think it was Allison, who was our Sophia activation in the Divine Feminine Summit, was saying, gosh, I don't see a lot of political stuff on Facebook anymore. Maybe it's my feed, right? It could be her feed. I can just tune into myself and I can feel into that I am so done with that old conversation. I'm so done with it. I never thought I would get there because I was very politically motivated for a progressive agenda until COVID hit. And then I saw the shadow frequency in all of it for me. And I have zero interest in playing the game, but I have total interest in synarchy, in what is actually possible. So my secret desire, my secret prayer is that the political party system in the United States breaks, it fractures. And that could be happening inside of the Republicans. The Democrats have gotten completely freaked out of fracturing because the Democrats have lost elections through fracturing. So I think there's more of of a movement, like we can't go off the playbook or else we'll lose the election. But Republicans are experiencing an incredible rift in their party right now. And so I'm hoping they lead the way with fracturing it, and I'm hoping that we develop a couple more political parties, because it seems to me like more voices are needed inside this system. People are not falling into black and white anymore. There's lots of gray areas. And so Gene Key 44 is about that gross shadow frequency of fracture and hierarchy that I think all of us, at least if you're on this live stream, are fucking over. So then what's possible? What's possible is that we go into synarchy. So the pathway to synarchy, which means to govern with, to govern together. And it's still, and Richard Rudd says this, and I appreciate this, it's integral. It doesn't mean that we all are this, like it doesn't destroy and dilute leadership. Like there's nobody, the buck stops with nobody, or it stops with all of us. No, it's not really that, because as you notice, if someone doesn't take leadership, even in going out to dinner, it's like, well, what do you want? I don't know, but what do you want? Well, I could do that. I don't know. Like that's also impotent. So we have like power over, and then on the other side we have impotence. But what if there was a way where there was a way to lead, there was a way to govern, but govern with? And the theme that's going to connect Gene Key 44 with Gene Key 1 is called silence. I'm just going to take a deep breath on that one. This is the one that like slays me, because I've been listening to the Tao Te Ching, Wayne Dyer's synthesis of scholarship of the 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao was written by Lao Tzu, or said to have written by Lao Tzu, over 2,500 years ago. And he witnessed this same stuff that's going on right now, of political leaders overtaxing people, over-controlling people. And what happens? He just, from a place of silence, from a place of witness, saw what happens. And so he really is like, less is more, Let people work it out. They will work it out. So it's been a deep transformation for me. I feel like it's very feminine. And as I move into feminine leadership, which will be the next offering that I have at the beginning of the year, I'm reordering my own internal structure using the principles of the Tao. And one of the deep principles of the Tao is silence. And you're going to see how silence weaves the 44 and the 1. So as we get to synarchy and we learn how to work together, the pathway is called teamwork. And what's so cool about it is that there's a very esoteric principle involved called fractal lines. And really what I interpret as fractal lines is soul families. So Gene Key 44 is saying, hey, guess what? Gather your soul family. I mean, maybe that's how we'll form political parties, governing parties. Maybe we take the word politics out and we use governing affinity parties. And the way that we govern is through affinities, of finding agreement, like finding your people. And when you find your people, you can still disagree, but you'll work it out because there's some common ground that you share. There's actually a spiritual bond that you share. So for so many of us who feel like we're the black sheep, anybody feel like the black sheep of the family, the oddball, the one who is different, that feeling of not belonging has probably catapulted you here or wherever to find your place of belonging, because the pathway to synarchy is belonging. It's called teamwork. It's the people who have this ability to assemble others to work together for a common good. And what it's going to take is knowing what genius you have to give. And that goes back to the gene keys and human design. And why did that technology even come through? It came through because we're living in a time where we have to take our entire embodiment with us. We can't separate off our emotional body, the truth of our experience with what it is we do, how it is we make money, and how it is we feel a sense of belonging. Because we feel a sense of belonging when we're seen. And how are we seen? Well, when we allow ourselves to be seen, when we allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable and not defended, and also the richness of the gifts that we've been given through our own story, through our life experience, we're seen. And that's why circles of women are so incredibly powerful. That's why we are actually poised to bring in synarchy in a way that the masculine hasn't been trained, right? They just haven't been trained. We have been trained really for thousands of years because it's in our nature through our double arc line, nipple to nipple arc line, to nurture and connect. So an integral theory of leadership doesn't have everybody being the same. It doesn't even have to be democratic. In fact, we get to say in an integral theory, there are some ideas that are better than others. And if you've ever been in a conscious decision-making group, all needs get met, but that doesn't mean that you get what you want, right? But it means that your openness allows shifting and changing, and your perspective is not rigid. It actually gets to shift and change as you watch the dynamic unfold and as others hold space for you in your position or your belief. So it's an incredibly interesting dynamic that we collectively are not quite ready yet for, right? There's groups of people that are practicing it. I've practiced it inside my leadership group. I've practiced it inside of the inner circle. We had a group of facilitators, and when every time we're doing a collective venture, trust me, shit goes down. It's not like all roses. And we get to deal with things, and we get to have hard conversations. And the more that I step into being a leader of my company and showing up inside the platform that I'm creating, that you get to all hear about coming soon, the Evolving Sisters Network, the more a lot of my shit comes up. And so the theme of synarchy is the same theme of the city in Gene Key 1 of beauty. It requires ego death. It requires knowing when your ego wants to be right about something and being willing to be in connection instead. So that's 44. Let's move over to Gene Key 1. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say about that. Yeah, okay, so let's make a bridge between Gene Key 1 and 44. So the bridge is silence. Synarchy and beauty. They're not programming partners, they're not related, except they come after each other in this mandala of the gene keys. So if we imagine it in a circle, the sun is moving and now hitting the energy of Gene Key 1, which is primordial fire. It is the masculine, and its programming partner is the feminine. And inside the masculine primordial fire is actually the seed of the feminine. And this is why it slays me. It is stunningly beautiful. So in order to govern, Gene Key 44, in order to govern with, in whatever role you are already a leader. You are a leader in your own life, you're a leader in your family, you're a leader in your community by the way you show up, by who you be. Let's use that as our definition of leadership. And one thing leaders do is they tune in to the frequency of the group. But there needs to be a deep inner silence in order for that to happen. And in our super busy lives, cultivating a practice of silence, a lot of people are heart bombing that, you know it, right? You know that. That makes you a better leader. Lao Tzu says that, if those who know are silent, those who don't know talk. I mean, he's just like, bam. So being in this deep silence allows you to witness and see energies flowing that you wouldn't already be able to see with your mind. You might even see the genius in something that your mind doesn't think is genius, that your mind thinks is irritating or not contributing. But a quiet mind can see a new perspective. And that is the shift that Synarchy makes. So beauty also relies on silence. The heart of beauty is silence. There's a story that Richard Rudd tells of Lao Tzu. And I love this story so much. Because this has happened. So think of it from your own perspective, maybe not like a guru living on a mountaintop, but from your own perspective. So Lao Tzu was this enlightened man who wrote the Tao Te Ching, or contributed to Taoism, the philosophy of Wei Wu Wei, action without action. Right? That the Tao, that life, capital L, is like moving. It's a force. And when we position ourselves, this is a very feminine way of being, when we position ourselves in the current of that force, then life opens up. And your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Tao. Now, think about that. So the story is where this master Lao Tzu received this apprentice, so to speak, and he was supposed to be a young man of much promise, and they had lived together in silence, no words exchanged for months. And they would sleep together, eat together, do their things together in silence. And one day before sunrise, Lao Tzu and this man climbed to the top of this mountain and watched the sunrise. And it was just one of those, it was like the sunset on Halloween here in our town. It was like spectacular, unbelievable. The kind that move you so deeply in your spirit, in your heart, that you have a sense of God. It's awe. And so as they were witnessing this sunrise, the young man teared up and he said the word, beautiful. And then they come down the mountain, they live for a few more years or months together, and then this man returns back to his village. And then the story goes that later, one of the men who sent this young man to Lao Tzu visits Lao Tzu, and he says, "What did you think of this apprentice?" And Lao Tzu says, "He sure talks a lot." So the understanding is you can ruin a moment with a word. inner silence has you hold the beauty of what's taking place without the need to ruin it with a word. So just take that in. Sometimes in feminine communities, people who are new, particularly women's circles, divine feminine sisterhoods, when you're new, sometimes it's uncomfortable to be in the silence. So sometimes people break the silence. Either like you could break it with a word, break it with a joke, or break someone's tears with advice or a platitude, like it's all going to be okay, it's all good. And just recognizing how breaking that tension, that tensegrity, ruins the beauty. The beauty vanishes. And so it's no judgment, it really isn't, because we're all where we are along the path. We're all learning, and we all have our various degrees of comfort or not comfort. But when those who are holding the circle hold that in deep silence themselves, that sense of permission reverberates out to allow others to even be uncomfortable in the silence. So Gene Key 1 begins with a deep fucking uncomfortability. I don't even know if that's a word. A deep discomfort. Gene Key 1 begins in discomfort. It is really, people who have this, especially if you have it hooked up to the 8, it's the creative channel in human design, because it's the 1 is the fire of creativity, but creativity comes from this silence. And when this silence is misinterpreted, it can feel like numbness. The shadow frequency of Gene Key 1 is entropy. Entropy is where we feel the silence and we turn in on ourselves through depression, through autopilot. There's such a shadow band of gloom that you turn in on yourself. It really, the gift frequency has melancholy in it. Because if you've ever created, sometimes I like to say, I was just interviewed actually for the book that the children's book I wrote, Forever Blue. And the guy was like, well, why did you write it? And I was like, well, because I was in a lot of pain. That's a great thing to do when you're in a lot of pain, is to turn it into art. So there's something to be said about the creative process coming from melancholy. Coming from that place that if we label depression, we've now turned in on ourselves and we have a problem to fix. But if we allow it, it could even be called the sacred pause. Yeah, so Brittany says addiction, good catch there, because the programming partner of Gene Key 1 is addiction, the shadow frequency. So we want to numb it out. We want to cover it over. We want to pretend like it's not there. We want to hide the numbness. And if those of you resonate with Enneagram 7, the last thing you want to do is feel that, the desert, the dry, parched desert inside of you, the no thing, the nothing. But Gene Key 1 says, stay with it. Call it a pause. Stay with it. Feel the blank space, knowing that everything comes from no thing. And you are here to bring in something new. You are a pioneer. So if you get caught up in, I don't want to fail, I don't want to take risks, I don't want to humiliate myself. Right? Who does? But again, all of that is this ego death coming from that deep well of silence. Listening so deeply to hear and feel the creative impulse, the movement. And when you're an artist of your life, of this world. So when you turn whatever that is into an offering, into service, it becomes art. It's what Gene Key 1 calls freshness. Then the freshness returns, like the spring, like the dew on the grass. Life returns. Yeah, I love this Gene Key. He says, and I'm going to read this quote that Richard Rudd says, is, "It is through individual creativity that all diseases and negative patterns will eventually leave the planet." Isn't that like, if there's anything that restores your power back to you, it is that your creativity is the antidote. Your creativity is the antidote to disease, negative patterns. I remember my very first sort of launch into the world. I had this moment in the middle of the night when I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to transition from the old world to the new world. I didn't know how to make money. And one of the things I heard myself say was, create yourself out of this problem. That's the brilliance of creativity. It restores you back to your God self, your ability to create. That's why we're alive. Thank you for the love bombs. Yeah. You want me to repeat that? Okay, so it says, it is through individual creativity that all diseases and negative patterns will eventually leave the planet. All right, so before we end, I'm going to end. Yeah. I'm going to end so that we can break, and then we'll jump on the Zoom and have our meditation and our pop-up of sisters sharing. But I can't end without this, because this is the whole freaking point of the whole thing wrapped up here. The whole thing is beauty. I'm going to read you this line, and somebody can put this in the chat. Beauty is the reason for life, and life is the reason for beauty. Beauty is the reason for life, and life is the reason for beauty. So those of you watching, I know some of you watching here are manifestors in human design, and I get to tell you that this is your particular province. This is your job. If you're not doing this, you're not doing manifestor. You can initiate all over the place. I don't even care. Right? If you're finding yourself in anger, you're in the not self, because what you're here to do is bring beauty. All of us are here to be beauty. So what is beauty? It is this perspective shift that allows you to see that everything is perfect. It restores you to awe. It restores you to God. It restores you to your power. It restores you to who you are. It makes sense out of everything that doesn't make sense. It's beauty. And beauty, as Lao Tzu says, when you name it, that ain't it. It's an experience. So my words, I'm talking all around it, but I can feel the space of it. That space of it is indescribable and unnameable because it is God. It comes from no thing and it is everything. And in order for me to access it, I have to die. Who's the I? The ego I gets to die. Every morning I take a walk because I want to set my circadian rhythms for the night. But actually what's been happening is every morning I go on a journey, and sometimes I cry on that walk, depending on what my dream space was. My unconscious is dumping and feeling the fears that are coming up, the fact that I'm getting older and I don't even know what the fuck to do with that. All of it gets laid on the altar in that walk. And all of it gets to die. It gets to burn up by this creative fire, because I keep coming back to the only thing that matters is that I show up and I create out of what is true for me to create. What's real, what's authentic, what's here to say. And sometimes it's hit and miss because I don't know. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of advice. There's a lot of outer chatter and noise. There's a lot of things. But cultivating a practice of inner silence, I've noticed that silent through line. It's a silent through line. Oh yeah, right. Die to the ego. Die to what you think it should be. Yes, you think I should be here. I should be doing that. It should look like this, right? I imagine you have that too. But when I surrender and allow, and that's really coming full circle back to this eclipse. I was reading Michael Lennox's post, and he's like, the touchstone for this eclipse is allow. There's challenges, there's squares, there's oppositions, there's the old and the new colliding. Allow. And that inner silence taps you into something that's so much greater. It's the Tao. It's the way. It's the movement. It's the coursing movement of life that will be here after you are gone. And it was here before you arrived. And it will be with you on the next iteration of whatever form you choose to incarnate in. It's the Tao. It's life. It's God. It's Goddess. It's divine feminine. It's divine masculine. It's spirit. It's whatever word you want to say. I'm seeing a lot of new names. Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. Let's just sit in the beauty. Let's just sit in the beauty and enjoy this beautiful space. Let's see if there's anything else that needs to be said. Yeah, so the fire, the creative fire, is the masculine principle. And the feminine, what happens is, as Richard Rudd says in his transmission of Gene Key 1, when you go deep into that fire, deep into the allowing, deep into the letting go, there you find the feminine. There you find the mystery. There you find the perfection of everything. So let's rub our hands together. Some of you may not join us on that Zoom, so I just want to circle back and circle up, complete in this way, rubbing your hands together, bringing your hands into prayer pose, rolling your shoulders along your back, and just feeling the experience of beauty for yourself in this moment. And then let's move our thumb tips to the level of our third eye point and gather all of this positive, beautiful, luminescent, collective, incredible energy, queen energy, sovereign rulership energy, allowing energy. And let's dedicate it to the merits. May all beings benefit from the merits of our efforts. Namaste. Thank you, beauties. Thank you for being here. Deborah put the, the Zoom link there. It is Crystal. Deborah put it. Maybe somebody can copy it again because it may have gotten lost in the thread up at the top. But let's pop over to Zoom in 10 minutes and we'll do our meditation. It won't be live streamed because it's not working right now for my Zoom to Facebook. So I was going to live stream the meditation, but just pop on to Zoom and then we'll have our sharing circle. So great to see new women here. I love you all, sisters. Let us know where you're from. Yeah. Thank you. So beautiful. I can't wait to read all of your comments. I just love our group interaction. Oh, cool, Katie. Thank you for that article. I can't wait to read that. All right, beautifuls. I'll see you on the Zoom. Thank you.